What is the worst place on Earth to live? Now, this is a rather difficult subjective question to answer. It is also completely situational. By this, I mean imagine being in the top 1% of earners and living somewhere like New York City, London, or Toronto. You'd likely have a nice house or apartment in a wealthy neighborhood and eat out at all the best restaurants. However, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and/or struggling financially, you'd likely see these cities as not so great places to live. They are crazy expensive, busy, and stressful. Busy and stressful are two words that can most definitely be used to describe our first place in this video, Dhaka, the capital city of Bangladesh. So with a metro population of some 24 million, Dhaka is one of the most populated and densely populated cities on the planet. Its roads look like this, its train stations like this, and its waterways like this. It is generally a very poor city with outdated infrastructure. In a recent study, Dhaka was also ranked as being the loudest city on the planet. The World Health Organization has stated that prolonged volumes of 70 decibels or above can lead to permanent ear damage. Dhaka came in at an unbelievable 119. In conjunction with the noise and the chaos, the climate can also be pretty miserable in this city as well. Well, that's coming from someone from England. Temperatures in the summer can see mid to high 30 degrees Celsius, combined with humidity levels of up to 80%. On top of all these problems, Dhaka sees some of the worst air quality on the planet. Bangladesh as a whole ranked as having the worst for the years 2017 to 2023. So you might live just outside of the city and have air conditioning, so you think you've escaped the worst Dhaka has to offer. But then a cyclone hits, causing major flooding, and then a week later an earthquake shakes your house. With Dhaka being close to the Indian and Eurasian plate boundary, earthquakes are always a threat, although large ones are quite uncommon. Next is a place that couldn't be any more different to Dhaka, Bangladesh, purely for the fact that 0 people live here. Although
50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
The place in question is no other than Chernobyl, the single most notorious region on Earth when it comes to nuclear issues. In 1986, a catastrophic nuclear accident occurred, resulting in a massive release of radioactive material that terrified not only Ukraine, but the entirety of Europe and beyond. It was the first incident of this scale. No one knew what the consequences would be. Apart from a few settlers, no one permanently lives here. Parts have radiation so high that it is completely uninhabitable for the next several thousand years. If you were crazy enough to live in the high radiation zone, you'd develop a disease called acute radiation syndrome, to which you'd be guaranteed a miserable, suffering death within weeks or even days. Alright, next is La Rinconada, a town found in Peru, and at some 5,100 meters above sea level, it is considered to be the world's highest permanent settlement, a pretty impressive status. The background of the town is also absolutely incredible, however that's where the positivity ends. Living here doesn't sound particularly great. As just mentioned, the city is 5,100 meters high. That is about 58% of the height of Mount Everest, or around Everest Base Camp. At this altitude, there is only around 11% effective oxygen, about half of what you get at sea level. Now, as someone who's travelled through Bolivia and Peru, I can tell you this absolutely sucks. It makes you feel like you are 80 years old. Just walking upstairs or doing regular tasks are an absolute struggle. It drains the life out of you. Now, with the town being so high up, the temperature is low all year long. It barely reaches 10 degrees Celsius at any point throughout the year. But with it being so high up, the UV is extremely high, meaning although it is freezing cold, you can still burn real bad, which is rather depressing, because if you're gonna burn, at least get a tan sitting around the pool, but here you'd be wrapped up in your winter clothes. Other than the incredible background mentioned earlier, the town itself is pretty dull and depressing due to it being a gold mining town. It's hilly, the infrastructure doesn't look great, and there's a huge trash problem. Oh, and the fact that the town is so remote perhaps cements this place as being one of the most depressing places I've ever read about. Now, La Rinconada has some stiff competition however, as there is a city in Russia that is sometimes described as being the most depressing city on Earth. Norilsk. This is what it looks like. The city is found in Russia's central north, where some 180,000 or so people call home. It is an extremely isolated industrial city. The skyline is dominated by funnels spewing out smoke and toxic chemicals. Below this, you will see the dystopian housing and factories that litter the city. Year-round, the temperature is freezing cold. There are no roads connecting it to the rest of the country, and there are some periods throughout the year where the sun doesn't rise. The town has a haunting past too. It was built in the 1930s as a site of a Gulag labour camp. Most of the housing blocks and main buildings were built by prisoners. They were forced to work all hours of the day in grueling sub-zero temperatures. The smelting of nickel ore at the town's local processing site has created astronomical levels of pollution. It is estimated that 1% of global sulfur dioxide emissions come directly from this town alone. In the summer months, Kuwait City, the capital of Kuwait, is one of the most uninhabitable cities on the planet. If you are outside, that is. In the month of July 2023 into August, for a period of around 6 weeks, temperatures pretty much every single day exceeded 46 degrees Celsius. There was also 3 days in a row where temperatures were above 50 degrees Celsius. Now of course this means that everyone stays indoors with their air conditioning turned on, so life isn't bad. But for anyone working outside, or the fact that you can barely go outside, makes this a very miserable place to be. Well, in my opinion anyway. Linfen is a city found in China, a little bit southwest of Beijing. It is known to be one of the most polluted cities on Earth in terms of air quality. This is due to the large amount of coal mining, factories and cars that can be found in the city. The air quality is particularly bad in the winter months, where most days look like it's foggy. However, it's not fog, it is smog. These levels of poor air quality are detrimental to human health. I'm not gonna lie, this looks like a very miserable place to live, not just because of the smog and its industrial appearance, but because temperatures can reach as low as -16 degrees Celsius in the winter. This is Colima, a city in Mexico found on its central Pacific coast. Now, at first glance, this city looks really nice, right? Some nice palm trees, architecture, and landscapes. However, what these images don't show you is the insanely high murder rate that is found within the city. In 2022, the city ranked first in the world for the highest murder rate for any city with a population over 300,000. The city had a rate of just shy of 182 murders per 100,000 people. For reference, Johannesburg of South Africa had 41.4 and Detroit in the US just under 49. The monumental rise in murders is said to be because of a three-way power struggle between 3 opposing gangs trying to control the area. Agbogbloshie is a notorious district found in Ghana, in its capital, Accra. Prior to July of 2021, it was home to one of the world's largest e-waste dumps, a place where many thousands of people lived and worked by salvaging products that were disposed there. The major problem was that people would burn these disposed items to salvage the metals from inside, which caused insane levels of toxic air pollution. However, in July of 2021, the government stepped in and shut down the site. This is how it looked after the shutdown. Today it is back to being a wasteland of trash. Sunram is a town found in India that has the unfortunate title of being the world's wettest city. The town sees an unbelievable 467 inches of rainfall per year. For reference, New York City, London and Sydney see 47, 24 and 48 inches of rain per year respectively. There's a slight misconception that London is a super wet city, when in fact in this case it is some 20 times drier than Sunram. The reason why this little town gets so much rainfall is because it sits in a place where winds from the nearby ocean bring lots of moisture, which falls as rain when it meets the hills. Now, this next fact is mind-blowing. On the 26th to 27th of July 1985, this town saw nearly 72 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period, one of the highest ever recorded in history. Again, for reference, this is pretty much 3 times the amount of rain that London sees in a year, so basically 3 years worth of London's rain in just 24 hours. Here is something kind of crazy. This island here, found in the middle of absolute nowhere, uses the British pound as its currency. It is of course no other than Tristan da Cunha, a British overseas territory that is considered to be one of the most remote settlements on Earth. The island is found some 2,400 kilometers away from the nearest inhabited bit of land, St Helena, another British territory. Now I of course have never been to Tristan da Cunha, so perhaps life here is great. Maybe the 238 or so people who live there live great lives. Maybe it's super peaceful and tranquil. But with the regard of how unbelievably remote this place is, some would see it as an awful place to live. It may kind of feel like a prison, a place where cabin fever could easily set in and deteriorate your mental well-being. The only way to access or leave the island is by ship, to which a 6-day journey will take you to and from Cape Town, South Africa. As someone who loves to travel and explore the world, that's the part that terrifies me, hence why it made it into today's video. Alright, this is a case where if you are rich, you likely live one of the best lives in the world, but if you are poor, then this place could be seen as one of the least livable places on the planet, Los Angeles. Insanely high rent and grocery prices, skyrocketing crime rates, gang violence, pollution, infrastructure built primarily for cars and a lack of opportunities has led to the city seeing some awful living conditions. Again, if you're a multi-millionaire up in Beverly Hills, you probably don't see this side of the city, but for the people who are struggling financially, this isn't a great place to live. Wildfires, flooding, mudslides, droughts, earthquakes, and extreme heat are all other reasons, thanks to Mother Nature, why LA could be seen as an awful place to live. Whenever I think of LA, I can't help but to picture this image, the absolute insanity of the traffic that can be sometimes seen within the city. No matter how many people switch to Tesla, the city still does get smog, although nowhere near as bad as what it used to be. Another relatively big city that could be seen as an awful place to live is, with reasons much different to our previous entry. It's a city that houses over 3 million people, but it is practically silent. Any idea which city I'm talking about? It is Pyongyang, North Korea. Due to only governmental and approved citizens being allowed to drive in the country, its roads are extremely quiet, which means less noise and air pollution. From above, the city looks kind of nice. It looks clean, quiet, and there's lots of open spaces. But of course, it's not physical reasons that make the city so awful to live in, but political. We all know what life is like in this country, I won't delve deeper into it. Kinshasa is a city most people likely haven't even heard of, let alone know anything about it. The city is absolutely gigantic in terms of population. It is actually the largest French-speaking city on the planet, as well as the largest city in Africa, with a population of over 17 million and rapidly growing. By 2050, this is projected to have doubled. At the time of writing this script, the city ranks first in the world for the worst air quality. Its air quality is so bad because of heavy traffic congestion, industrial emissions, burning of waste, and reliance on diesel generators for electricity. Combine this with noise pollution, high temperatures and humidity, limited access to clean water, and political instability, and you have one of the least livable places on the planet. To compound matters even worse, its population is only rapidly increasing, which will only make these issues worse. Asmara is a city you possibly have never heard of. I'd be pretty impressed if you could tell me which country it is the capital of. I'll give you a clue, it's an African country found in the northeast of the continent. It is the capital of Eritrea. Eritrea is often described as the North Korea of Africa, due to the government's totalitarian grip on its citizens. The country remains mysterious and largely unknown to the outside world. Similar to North Korea, its citizens lack human rights, political freedom, and restricted travel. The country also ranks towards rock bottom of the GDP per capita ranking. Eritrea also has forced conscription, which is where you are forced to join the military for an indefinite period. Now, this isn't unique to the country and always a bad thing. Other countries like Finland and South Korea also do this. However, if you refuse this conscription, the punishment is said to be unbelievably harsh and brutal, such as punishment to your family, forced labour, or denial of future employment or education. Just like North Korea, internet access is limited and heavily censored. Its citizens have little to no access to independent media, and information is tightly controlled by the government. Alert is a settlement found in Canada's extreme north, and believe it or not, people actually do temporarily live here. The settlement is actually the northernmost permanently inhabited place on the planet. Due to its extreme northern location, Alert experiences significant variations in daylight throughout the year, including periods of continuous daylight and darkness. From mid-October to late February, the sun simply does not rise, meaning the town is in a state of continuous darkness. At the peak of this period, there is no civil twilight, meaning it's completely pitch black. This lack of sunlight sounds beyond depressing. It would not only mess up with your internal body clock, but you'd see a huge drop in vitamin D levels, possibly leading to depressive symptoms. Not only this, but it is mind-blowingly cold there too during the winter. Temperatures can range from -30 to -40 degrees Celsius. And then in the summer, the opposite happens. The sun never sets. As much as I love the sun, as a human with a circadian rhythm who needs sleep and rest, it is nice to have it disappear every night. However, in Alert, Canada, this doesn't happen for some 3 months. What a strange place this would be to live. It's not like it's a big city with lots of things to do, it's a tiny settlement. Luckily, the only people there are there for 3 to 6 months, and they're there for work purposes, which should keep them busy. However, if you travel southwest, you'll arrive at Barrow, Alaska, where some 4,000 people actually live. They see similar conditions to that of Alert, where they can go months with or without the sun. So there we have it. There are some, in my opinion, of the worst places to live on Earth. Which do you think takes the crown as the single worst place from this video? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you loved it. And as always, thank you so much for watching.